Squishies. Welcome back to another vlog. This is The Incredibles 2. So before we start, normally when I do one of these, I try to do it like a few minutes, half an hour at most, after I watch whatever it is that I'm vlogging. For a variety of reasons I won't get into, I did not get a chance to record this until almost a week after I saw the movie. Normally in these circumstances I would just rewatch it, but A, it's still in theaters, which means that's a little pricey, and B, it's August 19th. I'm recording the first vlog of the month. I don't really have time to rewatch a 2-hour movie. So with that kind of caveat out of the way, so first of all, this was an overall good movie. I like Pixar, I like superheroes, it's fun stuff. That said, these movies are in general, like Incredibles and Incredibles 2, are in general more focused on the family side of things with the superheroics as a backdrop, which works well. But it means we don't get things like origin stories. It's just characters have powers, slap them in a suit, send them out. In this respect, it's got some similarity to the Teen Titans cartoon, where the characters have origin stories, but with a couple of exceptions, they're hinted at rather than discussed. And this seems in general to correspond to aiming at younger audiences, which makes sense with some of the stuff I've talked about superheroes elsewhere. The idea of heroic trauma is more of an adult one, in the sense that to a child, I have powers, I'm going to go punch bad guys, is a logical progression. Adults tend to need a little more than that, because even taking as a given that someone with greater power would use it to help people, that's not necessarily the way to be helpful. It's kind of a childish approach in itself. Which, I mean, is fine. It makes for very entertaining media. But it does, usually there's a little more explanation needed, and that explanation is usually given in the form of giving the character some kind of a trauma. So there really isn't any of that here. What we get instead is an origin trauma for the villain, which seems odd until you remember that this is a children's movie, and it's, in particular, a children's movie where the kids save the day. That was to an extent true. The kids contributed a great deal in the first Incredibles movie, but in Incredibles 2, they kind of rescue everybody's bacon. They need a little help once they get in a little too far, but if they had not come in, it would have been a complete disaster. And they specifically rescue their parents and their parents' adult friends and other adult superheroes. So there's a certain degree of kids versus adults going on, because the villains are adults, but ultimately the biggest heroes of the movie are kids. So it makes sense that the more adult approach is equated to the villains, because just like in the first Incredibles, the idea that maybe it's not the best thing in the world if some people are much more powerful than other people. Maybe that lends itself a little to abuse. Somebody asking that question is immediately dismissed. And part of that is just the logic of the genre. Obviously, anybody saying superheroes are not a good idea is either going to be wrong or outright villainous in a superhero movie, because they're attacking the very premise of the work. If they're right, there's no superhero movies. So in the first film we had Syndrome, and, his villainous scheme was to make everybody so powerful they didn't need superheroes. Which, when you really think about it, empowering people so that they don't need to rely on coercive physical force to protect them seems like a good thing. But within the logic of superheroes, obviously it's not. The same with this movie, where the villain's coming at it from a much more personal level, but their approach is still, maybe we shouldn't be looking to extraordinarily powerful individuals accountable to no one as our protectors. Now, obviously, there's different ways to read her character, because you could also read it as the kind of, libertarian, give everybody a suitcase nuke and everybody will be nice to everybody else forever bullshit. But to me, it read as more, we're in the logic of superheroes, so anybody questioning that is a villain. Now, obviously, she is a villain. She does awful things, while the superheroes do, try to save people from those awful things. But I'm kind of trying to poke it underneath that. Why are her views the ones that lead to villainy within this story? The fact that she does villainous things is just part of being a villain. I don't think anybody is out there saying that it is a morally good thing to slap mind control goggles on people when they're not expecting it, and create this expanding network of people you control to disrupt the international peace process and kill diplomats. That's pretty comic book supervillain. So that kind of covers that aspect of the movie. I was really into the relationship between Elastigirl and Evelyn. It was pretty clear from the start that Evelyn was the most likely candidate for the villain. The fact that they never showed us the screenslaver's face is pretty big signpost that it's a character we've seen before. Which means it's a character that we've seen who's not accounted for when the screenslaver is doing their thing. It doesn't leave a ton of options. And out of the ones that it leaves, Evelyn is the one who has the technical know-how to make it happen. So it's pretty clear. Plus, her name is a pun on evil endeavor. So, yeah. Still, even given that, she and Elastigirl were intensely shippable. Like, there's a moment when she and Elastigirl kind of look at each other and give each other this knowing nod of like, I recognize you, a woman working in what is generally considered a man's field, and I respect you. That's just like sparks going off during that. And they just seem to have this mutual rapport very quickly that made them very shippable. And, I didn't realize this until after I watched this movie. The Incredibles movies are set in the 60s. I never noticed. I guess I never really thought about them as not set in the modern day, but apparently they're set in the 60s, which explains a lot about Evelyn and Elastigirl for starters, and also about the whole Mr. Mom thread with Mr. Incredible. That's a very kind of 60s sitcom idea of the dad struggling to take care of the children while the mom goes out working, because, of course, that's an upending of correct gender roles and therefore creates chaos in the home. But at the same time, and this is what makes it so 1960s, it's, men could never do what we women do. So it's kind of like faux empowering for women while being actually pretty sexist. That said, there's another thread going on with that plot line of somebody struggling to deal with change. And we've all got a finite capacity to deal with change. Some of us more than others. But we do have this kind of... It is a capacity, and we have it to different degrees, and some people aren't great at dealing with it. And if we take that as a given about Mr. Incredible, I keep wanting to call him Mr. Fantastic, but that's Fantastic Four, which obviously the Incredibles are a take on, with the powers kind of swapped around a bit. He's, like, to his credit, he does not say, well, since I'm having trouble adjusting to this change, it is a bad change, and I'm not gonna, I demand that my wife come home and take care of the kids while I go out and work. To his credit, he is trying to support Elastigirl. He's just not very good at it at first, but he struggles to deal with it and slowly manages to find ways to handle it. Which is better. It shows that he is trying to treat her with respect and love, that he cares about his family, that he's capable of nurturing. He's just a 60s dude and didn't really get taught how to handle this. And so he's learning in a hurry. I'm a little on the timeline. I feel like new math is a little more recent than the 60s, but I'm not actually sure. It's also, like, I don't think they had screensavers in the 60s. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think they had, computers that displayed data on cathode ray screens that could get burned in images. And because it was computer data instead of stuff from the TV channel, it could be up there long enough to get burned in. That being why we have screensavers originally. But I could be wrong. A lot of this kind of computer stuff was invented well before it reached the general public. So who knows? Like the basic computer stuff, like hardware types. But yeah, overall, this is a good movie. I'd put it around the middle of the Pixar pack. I didn't come out of it going, wow, this was a straight up work of art, film of the year, the way I kind of did with WALL-E. I didn't come out of it, sobbing like I did out of Toy Story 3, but it's good, solid movie. It's not, it's not Cars by any means. Yeah, it was good. Gave a little stuff to chew on. And yeah, I'm glad I went. Guess that's about it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon for early access to vlogs, let's plays, essays, and more. And I will see you all next time. Bye!